Hey everyone, this is week 1. Our lecture for this week is about the common beliefs about good parenting. We'll also be talking about what we mean when we talk about regulation, and then I'll give you your homework for next week's class. So what's important in this class is that we approach the class with the proper mindset, and that's a mindset that allows all of us success. So I want you to be present in body, mind, and spirit. Be open to new ideas that may be different than the way that you're currently parenting. Be willing to share your ideas. Suspend disbelief, moving out of your comfort zone. And I really hope that each person can embrace what you're capable of doing for your child. So we're going to start with this icebreaker. Chelsea says no.
You've already done the icebreaker, Mom.
It's here? Why is it here in the PowerPoint?
I thought that you would, that's why I told you to advance through the PowerPoint.
Are you going to cut this out now? Just keep going.
No, I'm going to leave this here, Mom. Yes, of course I'm going to fucking cut. You please go to the points in the PowerPoint. You've already done the tricky moment.
I've done this?
Yes, Mom, remember you just had snack.
Okay, myths of good parenting.
Okay.
So
And just hold on for 2 seconds. Let's see if...
I need 2 separate sets of slides because I don't know what you're telling me to do. You don't know what you're telling me to do either.
Mom, I'm trying to figure it out, okay?
As you go.
Yes.
You ready?
Yes, go for it.
So there are many myths of good parenting. And when we think about parenting myths, we really want to think about how might those myths impact the interaction that we have with our children. And there may be some myths that you were raised with by your parents that influence the way your parents interacted with you. One might be, spare the rod, spoil the child, or a child is to be seen and not heard. Those obviously have an impact on our children. And what I'd like to do is just to share some common parenting myths and then think about them from the perspective of supporting positive interactions with your child. So these are the ones that I've heard most commonly, common parenting beliefs. If it takes 1,000 reminders to get my child to do something, so be it. More reminders lead to better behavior. What we're going to do is go through each one of these, but I want to give you the 6 first. Punishment may be distasteful, but it does teach children to behave better. Some parents go overboard with praise, and lots of praise can actually spoil children. If my child can do something right once or twice, he or she should be doing it right every time. When children misbehave, they're being manipulative. And finally, expecting my special needs child to behave well is expecting too much. So what I'd like to do is to go through each one of these parenting myths and think about it from the perspective of research. What is it saying to us? So this first one is more reminders lead to better behavior. You may have heard of more reminders as nagging. That's another word for it. So more reminders might be, extra instruction, pleas, threats, reprimands, warning, nagging. And actually what the clinical findings would say to us from a research basis is that excessive reminders make a desired behavior less likely to occur. So consider this, saying something 50 times does not make it 50 times more likely to happen. And the reason for that is because excessive reminders have the same effect on us that punishment does. So thinking about why are excessive reminders guaranteed to fail? If you say it once and it doesn't lead to the desired behavior or outcome, then the effectiveness of what you say diminishes. The next time you say it, it's even less effective, and the chances that your child will do as you've asked is further reduced. Often what happens at that point is the parent's behavior starts changing for the worse. So the parents might begin to get angry, statements start to get stronger, and strong statements made with lots of intensity are aversive, like punishment. And so the child seeks to escape even further, mentally and physically, from the person given the reminders. So notice that in all of this, the child has not cooperated or done what you've asked him to do. Another parenting myth is that parenting changes bad behavior. And if you think about, punishment changes bad behavior. So punishment in most households might look like threats that the parent gives to the child. Something like 3 strikes and you're out. The actual punishment might also include a timeout, taking away privileges, the parent yelling at the child, spanking, insults, stop acting like you're a 3-year-old, stop being a brat. And most parents begin mildly and then escalate to more intense levels. Most parents would say that they find punishing their child difficult and distasteful, but really believe it's a necessary tool for getting their children to behave better. So what's important here is that we think about that the clinical finding would say to us that punishment tends to increase bad behavior. And it's important to always go back to the research and see what the research says. So short term, the punishment may temporarily deflect the child, meaning that maybe you yelled loud enough that you scared him a little bit, and so he or she moves into compliance. But long term, the more a child is punished, the worse his or her behavior tends to become. And it's important to think about the why on that. And the why really is because punishment does not teach your child what the pro-social behavior is to do. So your child's not learning what he should do, he's learning what he shouldn't do. We also know that punishment does not reward the desired behavior. It produces numerous negative side effects on the parent and child, which then bleed over into other interactions. And by that I mean, when you've taken so much away from your child, they then feel very negatively towards you and may or may not want to be in an interaction. So there's something that we call the punishment trap, and it goes like this. The child misbehaves. The parent reminds excessively or punishes. The child may temporarily stop the misbehavior, which reinforces the parent. But over time, the child adapts. He learns to tolerate the parent's nagging or punishment because we are hardwired to adapt very quickly to negative conditions. So if it took 10 minutes of screaming and yelling and that you finally gave the child what he was asking for, the next time it might be 15 or 20 minutes. What we also see is that the adult increases their level of pleading or reminding or punishing. Timeouts become longer, shouts become longer. They might get a smack on the behind, it turns into 10. And over time, a heavier dose of pleading or punishment is needed in order to stop that misbehavior. But the cycle continues. The child continues to adapt and they continue to resist the negative conditions as fast as the adult's ability to impose them. So it's a very negative cycle for both the parent and the child. Another thing to think about is some of the side effects of punishment, and recognize that our children look to us as the adults to learn how to cooperate and how to behave. So when a parent models bad behavior, screaming and yelling, we often see worse behavior in the child. So hitting teaches hitting, yelling teaches yelling, telling a child off teaches children to talk back. Modeling is a very, very potent way to teach our children, much, much stronger than punishment. Know that punishment can be reinforcing for some children who want or need your attention, because even if it's negative attention, it's some kind of attention. So misbehavior may be when the child gets the most attention from the parent. And if that attention is highly reinforcing, don't hit your brother is better than not hearing anything at all, the child may continue to seek it. Delivering punishment changes the parent's behavior for the worse. It corrodes our sense of self as capable parents. Parents feel bad about punishing their children, or they feel unproductive as a parent. And eventually, pleasure in parenting can become severely compromised. Finally, with excessive reminders and punishment, the important thing to know is that there's no moral education or pro-social development that's taking place in your child. So, don't know if you remember back to when you were a child, but if you were told to sit in a chair and think about what you just did, that's really an adult thing. Children do not reflect on their misdeeds when they're being punished or nagged. They focus on the adult's intrusiveness. The adult anger, that's it, Buster, I've had it with you, or ceaseless reminders, become what the child is contending with, not the original misbehavior. And sometimes parents will mistake the sobs of, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, for remorse. But this is not what's happening. The child is actually trying to escape the punishment. So if punishment is so ineffective, why are we so quick to do it? And I think the real reason, if you think about it from a research basis, is that it produces short-term effects. It can scare, overpower, or exhaust your child into stopping the negative behavior that they're doing in that moment, which is reinforcing for the adult. There's also a natural desire on the parent's part to defend their parental authority. I'm the adult, I'm in charge. And so when the child does not cooperate, the adult may take it as a personal challenge and try to shut the child down. There's also some long-standing cultural norms, social pressure, such as spare the rod, spoil the child. And this is something that long ago, that's a line that came up long ago and started back in the 1920s with boxing ears in the store if a child was misbehaving. Spanking in the 1950s, time out in the 80s, with this idea that if we don't punish our children, they will be spoiled. And really understand that it is a hardwired response for parents. When our authority is challenged, the human instinct is to regain the upper hand quickly and by whatever means necessary. It's a fast, powerful response to misdeeds. Another common parenting myth that I hear is lots of praise can spoil children. And I encourage you to read the research on praise that's at the end of your PDF that you've got received from Chelsea. But know that the clinical findings tell us that praise is one of the strongest ways to influence your child's actions. And I think of praise, I would redefine it as presence. So it's a parent who's fully present with that child in the moment, attending to the child. And what the research would show us about praise/presence is that it's essential to improving behavior, or without it, we can make the behavior worse. The result depends on what is said, the quality of the praise, how you deliver it, and when it's delivered. The research on parents and praise would say that most parents do not praise their children too much. They tend to say a lot more about what the child is doing wrong than to note what the child is doing right. And that's just a normal brain response to negative stimuli. Parents also deliver positive comments in a way that undermines or reverses the potential good effect. So we know from the research that we don't want to praise a child's general qualities. You're such a good girl. But we want to make sure that we're praising the specific behavior that we want the child to do more of. Wow, you put your shoes on all by yourself. There's also something that we call caboosing in this class, where you add a negative comment to positive praise. So you start off okay, you cleaned up all your toys, wow, why can't you do it every day? And when we add that negative caboose on it, it takes away from the power of praise. So it really will decrease the child's motivation to cooperate the next time. This one I really love. If my child did it once or twice, he can do it regularly. And what we know from clinical findings on children is that performing a behavior once or a few times does not mean that it can or will be performed consistently. And I just want to put that into adult perspective for those of you who perhaps made a resolution on New Year's Day that you would go to the gym every day, and you went on the first and you went on the second, you didn't go on the third or the fourth, that even as adults, sometimes we can do something for a day or two, but we can't do it regularly. And the reason for that is consistency has to be practiced. So even when we know something is good for us, like exercise or eating healthy foods, it's hard to do it regularly. So being consistent is profoundly different from doing something once or twice. Parents often make an assumption if the child can do it once, but doesn't do it the second or the third time they're asked, it's because the child is being lazy, defiant, not listening. The parent gets upset. And I want to say that perhaps the parent isn't being realistic. In the same way that adults aren't consistent in changing habits, the same is true for children. So the best way to make a behavior become natural and consistent for your child is to give your child lots of opportunities to practice with lots and lots of positive reinforcement. Some parents actually will say to me that they think their child is being manipulative. And that's a pretty strong statement. The clinical findings would say to us that children are far less manipulative than adults, right? It's really anticipating and managing the behavior of someone else is really beyond a child's developmental capacities. They tend to just respond without thinking a lot about it. Adults definitely can be manipulative. So why do parents think that their child is being manipulative? And it could easily be because the child has a cranky response, he's not cooperative, which unfortunately the parent reinforces, and it turns it into a pattern. The child screams. To stop the screaming, you give in to the child's demands. And what you're teaching the child right there is to scream in order to get their demands met. And then we call the child manipulative, which is really a substitute for recognizing how we as the adults reinforce the bad behavior for our child. And finally, we have this statement that I've heard from many parents of children with special needs, that expecting a child with special needs to behave well is expecting too much. And actually, the research would say that children with special needs are able to improve their behavior at the same rate as their typically developing peers. And the reason for that is the principles for improving behavior and the dynamics that can stop or stymie that improvement are the same for all children, whether or not they have special needs. So in this class, we'll be teaching you that you can let go of yelling, threatening, begging, or pleading with your child and be far more effective. I'll be teaching you how to harness praise next week as the most powerful shaper of your child's behavior. We will teach you as well how to stop all the excessive reminders, instead be more specific, clear, calm, and gentle when asking or telling your child what to do. And finally, you'll be learning how to decrease your child's level of resistance or unresponsiveness while you increase your own sense of confidence and calm. So I said earlier that we wanted to talk a little bit about co-regulation and its significance for all children. Co-regulation is a really important concept, and it's about the child's optimal state of arousal. So our children can be over-aroused, they can be under-aroused. They can be organized in their arousal state or disorganized, well-regulated or dysregulated, upregulated or downregulated. But what we know is that a good regulation state is required for learning and for engagement with other people. It's important to know that one of the problems with pleading, nagging, or punishment is that those things dysregulate our children, which means they're no longer ready for learning. Co-regulation, one way to think about it is motherese, and you hear, or fatherese. You hear parents talking to their children and responding to their newborns in reciprocal ways and adjusting their comments based on the length of their child's babbling. And what's important is that there's a biological basis for this co-regulation in something that's called mirror neurons, which are present at birth, which allows our babies to co-regulate with us. And co-regulation is really what supports a child in developing socially and emotionally. So typically with adults, you're aware of the vibe that if you walk into a room and you see another adult who's very upset, both adults sort of adjust to each other. And the landscape is formed by the exchange of emotions of people present. And that's co-regulation. So if you were upset and I walked in the room, even if I was really excited in that moment, I would come to you in a quiet, subdued state to see if I could help you with your upset. This is not true when it comes to children. So co-regulation with children is very, very different because adults have a unique influence over the direction of the child's regulation state because children are hardwired to adopt the adult's emotional lead. So if the adult is upset and they send that over to the child will be upset as well. So here I might have a calm child. And if you think about this, this might be your child who's sitting quietly and playing with their Legos on the floor, who's approached by an over-aroused adult. This is the adult that wants to get to school on time. The adult can quickly project their upset onto the child so that both the parent and the child are dysregulated. And they're in this negative co-escalation pattern at this point. Similarly, if I have an upset child, right, and I have an adult that can project calm to the dysregulated child, you'll notice that the child will accept and take that better state of regulation from the adult. They're hardwired to do so. So when we understand regulation, we know that there's that optimal place, the green zone, you may have heard of it. There's places where kids are regulated. There's places where kids are dysregulated. And regulation really refers to your arousal and physical state. So it's emotional and physical arousal. And a well-regulated state is required for all learning. So being well-regulated is both physiological, it's how I feel in my body, it's emotional, my emotional state, and it's my cognitive state. If we are able to, when we are able to support our children with positive regulation strategies, we find that our children are then stable and flexible. So when our children are in that magic green zone, they are stable and flexible as they approach their daily experiences. So they have a calm state, they're positively engaged, and they're productive. There's an absence of excessive stress. This is another way to view it, and I think, knowing different parents across time, it helps to think about this in different ways. But sometimes our kids are in the red zone. This is when they're screaming or yelling. They might be laughing, throwing things. We might call that the red zone. They're agitated. I want you to hold that at the bottom it says the child is unable to cooperate. And then if we look at the blue zone, under-aroused or dysregulated, the child's in shutdown, he may be staring, not responding, not productive. He too is unable to cooperate. So it's only when a child is in the green zone, where he has flexibility with stability, that he's in a good state of arousal, well-regulated, that he's curious and interested in his world. He's calm and able to explore, sustain his attention. He's open to new and different experiences. He's flexible, he's relaxed, and he's able to cooperate. So if I have a child that comes to me either red or blue, my only goal is to get that child to green. Once I get back to green, then I can go forward. So why do some children seem to get stuck? And what you have to think about this, especially for children with any kind of special needs, is that they don't have as many opportunities for co-regulation as their peers. And it may be due to auditory, visual, or motor differences that it may be hard for the child to read the adult's cues, that's the receptive side, or to form clear communication and response. Their senses, the way that they experience the world, may not be well integrated or modulated. And so they may not be paying attention to what's really socially salient. And so it can be hard for adults to read the child's cues. So if we think about it, we have to think about, well, what does the child need at this point? And at this point, it's for the adults to take more responsibility to support co-regulation, which allows for improved social and emotional development for the child. Increasing our responsibility means that we dial our attempts to engage the child up to produce emotionally relevant and co-regulated responses in the child. If they need celebration, I will praise them. If calm is called for, definitely I can project calm towards the child. Know that if I'm in a moment where a child is in a red zone, the quality of my calm is key. I can't be flat and dead to the child, because that doesn't help the child move forward. I have to be warm and accepting and attentive. So we saw tonight some of our videos where we had a challenging moment. Saw today some videos where we had a challenging moment. What I would like you to do for next week is to submit a video of a daily routine or other play-based interaction with your child that seems to be going better, and you're interacting with your child and it works. And I want you to think about interactions that seem easier than others, and let's get a short video, 1 to 2 minute video of that interaction that you can share with us. So, positive moment, 1 to 3 minutes in length, downloadable. And if you could submit that video, actually we should change this for this class. It should be submitted by Friday so that I have it in time for your Sunday morning class. All right, everybody, thank you so much and look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye-bye.